Keisha introduced 4 of our Women Leading Women panelists, and we have 2 here tonight because Andrea emailed me this morning and said she had the flu. She cannot make it. So we hope that she has a speedy recovery. And we definitely, I said, well, if you're sick, please don't come. We have a room full of people, and we all want to be well on Friday morning because it's the weekend. And Brenda got called to a meeting in Florida, so she couldn't come, but she did something before she left. She came to Smith. Like Brenda fashion, she was not going to miss the party, and she has videotaped something for us to share with us tonight. So you will experience Brenda, but you will not experience Andrea. So we'll show you Brenda's clip right now, and as you watch Brenda, we'll have the other panelists come up front.
Hi. I'm Brenda Freeman. I'm so sorry that I'm not able to be there with you all this evening. Since I was honored in 2014, a lot has changed. I had just recently moved to the West Coast. I was head of global marketing for DreamWorks. Since then, I've now moved back to the East Coast, and I'm Chief Marketing Officer for the National Geographic channels in Washington, D.C. I didn't start as a marketing executive. I actually started in a general manager track. I wanted to run a business. I wanted to manage a P&L. And as I was going through the training program at Pepsi-Cola, I realized that in order to, to really be a part of this general management track, it was going to require a lot of moves. And I was newly married, knew that I wanted to have a family, and so I knew that the sacrifices that would, require moving up the ladder with this general management track would require a lot of movement, which would be disruptive for my soon-to-be family. So I took a very conscious pivot and said, nope, I'm going to actually go the marketing route because I can sort of grow my career and not, put that sacrifice on the family. So the one word that would describe me that probably works for both my professional and personal life is extreme balance. I tend to try to be super focused on the things that are on my plate at the time. So when I'm at work, I'm 100% in it. And when I leave work, I really try my best to at least be able to provide, safe time that's more on the personal side of things. I would definitely say my greatest success is having a tight, loving family. I believe the value of mentoring is it's hard to even put a value on it. It's essential. I believe that, this idea of making sure that you have your own almost like personal board of directors, advisors, who can give you the real poop, who perhaps have already walked in those shoes or a couple of stages ahead of you, have made mistakes, are willing to invest in you, are willing to make the call, on your behalf. I feel like those relationships are the lifeblood of how business gets done. Wow, it's like the culture of where you work it can totally make or break your success if you don't do the homework ahead of time to really get a sense of whether this is the type of place for you. Some of the new tech companies, their cultures are so different. Radically different. You got to really make sure that you will thrive in an environment that's a little bit more chaotic. It's probably less people-friendly. It's about performance first, the relationship second. So you've got to do the homework. When I'm ready to leave the corporate world, when I'm ready for my phase 2, how do I want folks to remember me? I would say hopefully that they felt like I was a genuinely authentic person who was a people-first type of leader. I believe that how the work gets done is equally important to the work, the accomplishments. Choose passion first, and success will follow. I cannot underscore how important that is. in terms of the longevity of your career and enjoying what you do in life. You have to be willing to take the risks and take risks early, fail fast so that you learn from it. You have to be able to work in an environment that is, constantly changing. The parameters of what success looks like today is not going to be, what it looks like, let's say, even 12 months from now. You have to be the type of person who can think critically, see the opportunity, be willing to take risk, work as, really great with other people. It's like that's those are sort of the factors of success. You got to make sure that you choose a profession or you go into an area that you love, because then the rest sort of comes. Enjoy life. I'm sure a lot of you sitting there are leaning forward and taking notes very earnestly. I see it in my daughter who's, in college, is sort of like that generation, very earnest. They're working very hard in college. They're worried about the next step. Am I going to get a job? It's like, relax. That's the advice I would give. Like, enjoy the ride. Enjoy the moments. Take risks early. I cannot underscore that enough too. So that would be my biggest advice to you guys. Relax and enjoy the ride. Because the more you enjoy the ride, the more success, I really do believe, that comes along with it. I've fallen a few times and I know how to get up. I know I'm not going to break if I fall. And those are the types of things that you really do learn over time. And so know that those things will come, particularly if you're, an undergraduate sitting there in the audience. Like, know those things will come, but just enjoy it. Like, enjoy the experiences and don't worry so much about what's to come.
Okay, so on to the questions. So we're going to ask some questions, and then we're going to allow time for you all to ask some questions. So I'll try to keep my part, short so that you all get a chance to ask some questions. So one of the things that Brenda talked about was mentorship. And we all hear about mentorship a lot. And I wanted to get your all's perspective on what really is it about mentorship, and then this whole notion of sponsorship. And how important is that in really getting an advocate for yourself? So, thoughts?
Well, for me, I had personal mentors, sort of people who, like my mom and others that I surrounded myself with, that sort of was kind of the rah-rah, you can do it mentor. But being in engineering and in construction, they had assigned mentors, but that didn't quite work for me or them. So, if we're talking 25 years ago or so when I got started, I think the companies now have come a long way with that, and I think mentorship is very important in helping to advance your career. And more importantly, though, that sponsorship piece that you were talking about is important, but you have to make sure you attach yourself with the right sponsor, that they are the upwardly mobile person in the company that is favored, so to speak, because it's not just the person you get along with or the person that can, they might guide you, but they might not be the one in favor, and so you want to attach yourself to some of the right people. So it's a little like solving a puzzle and finding those mentors that you connect with and that will advance you and advise you.
Yeah, I agree. I think for mentors, you should have plenty. Everybody you can find, and it could be up and down the spectrum. I think I got so much out of my early career just being with my peers across the company, and we would go to lunch every day and just share stories, and they were, I was in, I guess at that time I was in programming, but my friends are in scheduling and content and production and marketing and PR, and just hearing what was going on in the other parts of the company really just helped us make connections and learn about the business in ways that we wouldn't have had we not had that relationship. So I think my colleagues were as much mentors to me at that time, in my early stage of my career. And then I think it's just you find the people you connect with in the company, and it could be 1, 2 levels up. there's obviously the formal mentorship programs, which I think are as important too, but, I mean, I think that just reaching out to people, having the personal relationships, getting together in professional groups after work, anything you can do. I mean, I really just like the term networking because it seems so forced and fake, but if you can go to the events just to meet people and hang out, I mean, that just always helps with confidence, it helps with relationships. I think sponsors are a little trickier, those are the people that are really going to be your advocates in the organization, and I think that has to be a very specific, almost a natural connection you have with somebody, and almost the sponsor picks you in a way, and then you pick the sponsor, because for the person really to be your advocate and push you along, it is such a specific and personal relationship that's going on.
Yeah, it's almost like a gift that you didn't ask for. You're all of a sudden you're like, well, why are they doing that for me? But you have to kind of hold on to it and realize it.
Well, we talked about that, so we want everybody here to be really aware of the importance. I think they've highlighted, and I know our other speakers have too, that you do need to have mentors, and you do need to be thinking about sponsors. People that, they seem like mentors, but they are your advocates. They are people who will recommend you for those higher level positions. Your mentors might be your role models and people who listen to you when you want to chat about things, but sponsors are the ones who push for you and say, wait a minute, we have an opening for something, let's think about this person. And so you really have to be aggressive and make sure that you're forming these relationships. So you brought up networking, and we all know that networking is important, and of course you're all here, and we're going to be networking, and so give you all a lot of credit right away for just being here. But what are the things that you all recommend as it relates to networking? And I should point out, we do have courses in networking. Dr. Bartol's taught one of them. So that's a good idea to learn more about it. But I mean, what specifically should people do to really be effective in networking? Because we talked a little bit earlier about this.
Right.
Yeah, well, I don't think I'm particularly good at it because I don't do the formal, researching and reaching out to people. Mine is just much more organic where, if events interest me, I'll go, I'll meet people, try to connect with them. I'm not diligent about, trying to research who I want to meet and going out and meeting them. So I know people do that and there's nothing wrong with it. That's just not my style. But for me, it's making connections with people, having a place to go. I think I told the story last time I was here. I just always, wherever I went, outside of work at least, felt like a fish out of water, whether it was, going to my church because I was the working mom, or just at different places. I just always felt like I was a different person. And I remember my first time it was an organization called Alliance for Women in Media, and the first time I went to a board meeting there, I was like, I'm with my people. Like, these are my people. I'm in here. And it was just such a great feeling just to go, okay, wow, okay, I can finally relax and let my breath out and just be me because I belong here and they get me. And so for me, that was, I have plenty of those relationships at the office, but this was a place that I could go outside of the office and actually feel like I was understood. So that's what it means to me.
So for me, networking, I'm an engineer, I'm kind of analytical, but I do have the other somewhat gift for gab, but hadn't really exercised it except in trying to build buildings. And then about 5 years ago, but some of this confidence I have to give some credit to the Smith School for, because I did go out and get an MBA, but really hadn't utilized it in my career until maybe more like 5 years ago. And so my job is about networking as head of business development for the company, trying to bring in new work. And I sort of went about it in a way where my job's to get new work, so I want to meet with you, you have work, and that's all I've thought about talking about. So over the past couple of years, I've more evolved to sort of taking a posture of relaxing and really building a relationship and connecting. But the difference, and probably not only just because I'm in the construction and design and engineering business, probably happens in all industries. Most of all of us are going to face where a lot of the people in the room, except like tonight, are going to be mostly men that we're networking with. So how do you build that connection, that relationship? You have to find some common ground beyond the work that you're trying to get. So the advice is, you know, try to develop interests or other things that you can talk about just to build a relationship. So it doesn't feel like every time you're trying to network that that's really what you're doing, but you're more building a relationship with that individual.
So we were talking earlier about really having things to talk about, like sports, right? And you know, sometimes people are like, I don't know anything about sports. Or, you know, I think it's interesting because it's the same kind of thing as when you're, you know, a lot of us do executive education work, right? So when you go into an audience, you have to have something to connect with. I know for me, if I go to a new city and I'm doing some work, I always talk to the cab drivers and see what's happening in the city. And I try to scan the paper, the local paper, just to see what's going on, so you can immediately make connections with people. Oh, I see that you're sponsoring, you know, this big event, or you have a sporting event going on, or whatever, because usually people will talk about it without offending them, right? So, you know, sports are really important, real estate's really important. I mean, there's certain topics that most people, especially men, gravitate towards. That makes it a little bit easier. And I think that's what you're saying. Figure out what those are so you have a personal connection.
So one thing I've done to that point, when I know specifically I'm going to an event and certain people are there that I want to meet, I will look up their bio and try to find some sort of connection, even if it's just something like they ski, whatever it is, something that I can start a conversation on.
Yeah, that's great advice, and there's no reason not to do that now. Right. Being able to find pretty much everybody, you know, either on LinkedIn or so. So one of the things that, and I think our student presidents talked about, and officers about a lot of different eventing that they have done, and our MBAs talked about their Get Confident series that Tiffany mentioned. I know Allison was heavily involved in as well. So they developed a series of, you know, things that women generally don't have a lot of practice in, like golf. Or you guys talked about learning how to play poker, understanding spirits, not those heavenly kind, but the other kind of spirits. Maybe that's what you're talking about. So are there other areas, or what do y'all think about certain other kinds of skills that would be really beneficial for people, in addition to the coursework that they're doing, to gain additional confidence in?
Well, I know when I was here, we took an etiquette class and, you know, how to go out to dinner and the plates, and I thought, you know, how to talk at a cocktail party, how to hold your glass and your plate, like that to me actually I think about it all the time whenever I go to a cocktail party. Do I have my name tag in the right place? So to me, that was really valuable. I mean, I think confidence is a hard thing. You know, I know you're asking more about skills, but I think confidence is something that, for me at least, has kind of, you know, I've had my ups and downs where some years I feel really empowered and confident, and, you know, 2 months later, I just, you know, I sink again, and you have to kind of pull out your old tricks to kind of build it back. But I think you just, you know, throughout your career, you're going to have your dips, and just, you know, having that self reflection to figure out that, okay, this is just a time in my life, and I have to sit back and try to figure out what are the things that I can do to get that confidence back. And, you know, so that's been a learning experience for me over the years. And, you know, I've had years where I've been just kind of down on myself and just, you know, I kind of go into hibernation a little bit and, you know, like, don't pay attention to me, let me just do my work and I'll get out of here. And then I'll kind of emerge from it and be like, okay, I'm ready to go. What's my next project? And, you know, so I think the important thing is just not to beat yourself up about that, and just know you're going to have a long career, and there's going to be plenty of time to make your moves, and other times to kind of retreat a little bit and kind of build yourself back up.
Well, you talk about self-reflection there, and that's really important for people. periodically take stock.
Right.
And just the recognition that, there's going to be ups and downs, and that's normal, right? Yeah, so,
Well, for me, I'm a tomboy, so I connect a lot of times with things in conversation that guys like to talk about, but I practice a lot on people that it doesn't matter. So I'm going to the grocery store. I'm at the grocery store, I'm checking into a hotel, whatever. I'll just say, "Hi, how are you?" And I just try to connect and practice. And I mean, I don't do it as much anymore, but when, a couple years ago when I was really trying to build up that confidence, it helped to do it where there was no risk. It didn't really matter if the guy at the hotel didn't speak to me or not. Most likely they did. But I would just randomly, how many people get on an elevator and people say nothing? Nothing. What? So I would do it then. I would just say hi, and start talking, and then realize, hey, they're not going to do anything bad to me, and it gave me the confidence to be able to go out and be in an event where it does matter, and just go up and introduce myself and start speaking.
great tips. So now, in the elevators, all of you should be talking. At least there. We're making a lot of hotel clerks a lot happier now. So, if we, I talked earlier about enticing women to go into business, and I know you've dealt with a lot of all-male environments. So what thoughts would you all have about how we get more women in business to really, first of all, get interested in it, or, to then be able to have an impact in business? What do you think?
I was thinking about that when we were talking earlier, and I'm just thinking back to my childhood, and then I actually have both of my daughters here in the audience, and we talk about business a lot, but when I was younger, I think there needs to be some discussion specifically about it, because business really just seemed like, well, it's going to happen. It's business. It didn't feel like if you're a doctor, you're an engineer, you're a lawyer. It didn't have its distinct differentiation, because everything that we do is business, whether it's the trash collection company or the utility company or the engineering firm or whatever, it's all business. So it just felt like, somebody runs that. But I think reaching to the younger folks and having them understand the specific differentiation between, everything is business surrounded by it, but helping them understand how you can develop from that the actual skills to run that business, even if there's a trade involved in that business.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was thinking that when we talked about it earlier, what does that even mean, going into business? Like, how would you even explain it to, a young child? I was going to say unfortunately, but I love them. I have sons, so. So I was trying to think, I can't even think about what I would say to my daughters, because I don't have them. But yeah, I think I think a lot of times when you talk about business, everybody thinks sales, and I think for some people they gravitate towards that, and I think that's an easy sell, no pun intended. But I think for the other people who just aren't really interested in the sales side, I think that's the harder conversation. Like, how do you convince them that it's not all sales or other aspects? I try to say it, like for me, I'm somebody who, I love TV. I love that I work in TV because I have to read people and all the tabloids because it's part of my job. But, and so the one thing I've been saying to my sons, and I think you can, switch it, is, they're both very into music and sports, and they're probably not going to be professional athletes, and they're probably not going to be professional musicians, but that doesn't mean they can't go into those fields and work in the sports arena or in the music arena, whether it's in marketing or in sales or in finance or any of the other support areas that you need running those businesses. So I think that might be another way to kind of, figure out what that particular girl is interested in and then say, okay, well, here's another way that you can work in that field other than, being the designer or the, whatever she might be interested in.
Right, because even if you're interested in art,
Right.
that's a business, right?
Right,
So
yeah.
there's that aspect of that.
Right,
So,
run a
You're
gallery.
connecting the dots on that.
right. So now I know you both were in fields that, heavily dominated by men, and people always want to know, so challenges associated with that. One of the ones that you had mentioned to me before was getting feedback. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about that, about the difficulties getting feedback from men.
Yeah, I was just saying, for probably the past 10, 15 years, I've worked for a man. He's been my direct supervisor, and every single review and every single time I've gone to talk to him, how am I doing? Can you give me some advice on this? I'll even say, hey, look, I know I'm not good at this particular thing. What can I do? Oh, you're great. You're great. Don't even think about it. Wonderful job. And I was saying, this is really, I feel like it's been a disservice to me. I don't know whether it's been two different men, but, I don't know whether they're afraid to hurt my feelings or they're afraid I can't take it but I just feel like it's, like I'm seeing things that I should be developing, but I'm not getting the right feedback from them about what I can be working on. And so some other things will get reassigned to somebody and they'll give me a different project, but I've seen it a couple times in my career where I've lost projects because they've given it to a man who's, I admit, is better at it than me, but had I been given the chance or told what the expectations were, I might have done a better job at it. So I just, I haven't been able to figure out how to, I have a meeting scheduled in a couple weeks to go. Say, look, I'm going to have that honest conversation. Say, like, I've tried to talk to you about this and you've blown me off, so I really need you to sit here and tell me what you think. And I promise I won't cry. Which is funny because he cried the last time he was talking. Well, he's much more emotional than I am. Like, what?
You mentioned your fear of,
Don't say anything, Shawnee.
you mentioned your fear about them sometimes overprotecting you, and there's actually research on that
Right.
a lot of times that men will overprotect women or persons of color because they know they'll stand out, and if they don't do something right, then that's a worry to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I think you're saying it's really important to get that feedback
Right.
and not be overprotected because you can be held back by being overprotected. So it's really fun.
I've been fortunate to not really have that problem with feedback, because early in my career I worked for Clark Construction and Turner Construction, and they have a very robust review program and a lot of mentoring and classes that you can take and so on. But they have, I don't know, it's like a 10-page review, and you get very direct feedback not only from the higher-ups but also from your direct person that you're working with. And because that industry is so driven on immediate performance, like if you didn't pour concrete that day, we have a really big problem. That feedback was instantaneous. So that's how, the last, or the first, say, maybe 15, 20 years of my career. But now I work for a woman. She owns a company, and I certainly get direct feedback from her, so I've been pretty fortunate as it relates to feedback.
So, but I think just be aware of that, because if you're not getting the feedback that you need, once again, that's the benefit of mentors and sponsors, or other people can tell you that. As Brenda said, give you the real feedback.
But let me just add this. So in my current company, I'm one of 8 leaders. We're all in the same level, and we all report to the president of the company, president and owner of the company. And there are some women and some men that are my colleagues And instead of the men coming directly to me with whatever issue they have with my team, they'll go to the president. So there is some issues with that, and I've addressed them front on with that, saying, hey, I can't solve your problem, but here you're going to go above, give me a chance. So I would say when you're facing things like that, that you just, I mean, they don't expect you to do that also. So if you just confront them head on in, obviously a professional manner, it helps you gain the respect and redirect the problem and, sort of work collaboratively to solve those.
So that's where getting those practice skills and having difficult conversations would be really beneficial. So I want to open it up to questions. Is it, before we do that, some other burning piece of advice you want to make sure they get before we ask for other questions? What's the pressure on? Tip or something. You want to make sure that everybody in here does.
Well, I'll just pull something from when I spoke 5 years ago, if anyone was here, they probably remember this, but, I would just say, just make sure that, to what Brenda was saying, follow your passions and really advocate for yourself. Don't just wait for that promotion to come to you or someone to pick you out. Or, I know sponsors are sometimes odd. They might have to connect or pick you out, but really advocate for yourself onto where you want to go in your direction. Don't just wait for that next step to happen.
I have two,
Great
actually.
advice. Sure.
Thinking back to my last talk. One is, don't be afraid to make a decision. I can't tell you how many times early in my career where, and even today, where we'll sit in a conference room and everybody's looking around the room, like the answer is obvious, but no one wants to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And, I think a way that you can get your authority and, I'll say power, is by making a decision. And, it might be the wrong decision. I'm leading this project now that is pretty big, and it affects the whole global company, and a lot of, it's IT and HR and finance, and, people are afraid because we haven't worked everything out. And I said, that's my job to worry about. I will take the fall if this doesn't work. Thank you for pointing it out. That's your job to make sure I understand all of the different, risks and things that aren't perfect yet, but we'll solve them as we go. And I just need you to keep moving, and I'll tell you when you can stop moving, but if we hit a roadblock, that's mine to solve. Like, that's my problem, not yours. And, I think it's sort of giving people the freedom to keep moving. Otherwise, you're not going to get all these groups to agree on the direction. But I had to take that and say, we're going this way, I need you to come with me, and we'll make some pivots as we go. And I think, I might get in trouble, I might make the wrong step, but I'll be honest about it, and I'll go to management and tell them what happened, and then we'll figure it out together. And I think people are just always afraid to make that first move. My second one is to, when you're working with your mentors or your bosses or the people in your organization, and they say, hey, have you thought about this job? Or, you should think about applying for this position over here. Follow up on it, like do it. Because a lot of times individuals will kind of pigeonhole themselves into a certain track or to a certain field, and a lot of times people who work with you see things in you and your skills that you don't necessarily acknowledge yourself or have it recognized. And so, I ended up in finance and doing the job I am because somebody did that for me. I would have never thought to do finance. But, I still don't consider myself a true finance person. I'm an operations person who understands finance, but I'm working in a finance role because somebody saw something in me that I would have never picked out for myself. So pay attention to what other people are encouraging you to do and follow up on it.
Yeah, that's great advice, and I think there's plenty of research that says that women want to be 100% sure that they have all those skills, right? We've all heard that. And yet, you know, I hear you saying personally, the first piece of advice is just, you know, you make the decisions. And then the second thing is other people do see other towns that you have that you may not see, and to pursue this. Okay, so let's open it up to some questions. And how do we do this? Yes, Adriana, start. I think the mic's coming.
Thank you very much. My name is Adriana. I'm a second year MBA student. Thank you so much for being here. It's always nice to see alumni and have this kind of congregation in the Smith community. My question is around the balance of kind of soft power and kind of a firmer kind of power. I find myself struggling with that, and I've been told a lot that I'm too direct and come across as too aggressive. So I've always struggled with how to be firm and yet not aggressive, but also not to undersell myself, like saying a lot of maybe or would you, so I've kind of heard both sides. Like don't sell myself short, or don't seem not confident, but then also not too aggressive. So how do you balance that?
Great question.
I think part of it is, I think you should be direct. I think if you have something to say, you should say it, and you should have to temper yourself. Maybe what they're talking about is recognizing that there might be another opinion, or that somebody else might have a different viewpoint. And I mean, I don't know you, so I'm not saying anything personal, but maybe it could be that it's take a minute before you say something to listen to what other people have to say, and then tailor your remarks to that, and recognize that there's different opinions. That to me is where the kind of softer skills come in, where you're a listener first. And it's part of negotiation, but it's also part of leading, like understanding that there's different perspectives and viewpoints that you need to take into account, and then tailoring your remarks to make sure that you're hitting each one of those people, that each one of them are getting something out of what you're saying.
Right, I mean, people are different receivers of information, so the listening part and the observation of the personalities of the people in the room and directing your response. I do think you should remain being direct, but it's just how you communicate that to the people may need to change. You have to, sometimes you might be talking to somebody that I think you just have to know personalities. The same answer might have to be delivered differently to different people.
Okay, other questions? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Allison Davern. I'm a second year MBA. My question is regarding a story that was in the national media like this week, so maybe you guys have seen it. But it said that some study that managers are actually penalized in the workplace, either through lack of pay or not getting promotions, if they advocate for diversity, inclusion, and equality issues. So my question to you all is, have you seen that in any of your experience in the workplace? And if so or if not, what strategies do you use to ensure that you are advocating for what's right for your people or for the culture, while not taking a personal hit to your career for doing so?
I have not seen that article, but at least in the industry and the space that I'm working in, there's actually a major movement to having more diversity and inclusion because folks think that, and I believe that it makes for a richer delivery of services and strategic partnerships and so on. But personally, and what I do at my company and what our company does is part of our mission actually is enhancing people's lives through the built environment, and that also means in our community. So what are we doing to have diversity and inclusion? So we just adopt it as a part of our culture. So I personally don't face that in my, it's not a hindrance to my career development and growth.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think it's necessarily a penalization. I think though, I mean, I have I have seen or observed situations where you can see how companies would become very male-oriented because you tend to hire people you know. Like you start hiring in your community, you know, your community is all white males, then that's who you're hiring just because that's the pool you're drawing from. So I think companies have been much more intentional about going out and finding the different pools. But even, you know, I can just see it even in certain departments where, you know, within a company where you're kind of going to the same pool of people, and it's just because it's not intentional, it's not even conscious, it's just the group that you know and the people that you're comfortable with, and that's who you end up hiring. So I think you have to be, I think companies have learned that, and they're being much more specific about making sure that they're reaching out and getting the widest pool of applicants. And I think they're realizing the benefit too of having that diversity. You know, especially for the global companies, you need to have, you know, the different cultures and the different situations. And most of the companies today are dealing in the global marketplace. So.
Well, and I think that study too, I think it sort of highlights the sad to say, but we often need our male colleagues to help us for the issue to have credibility. And so for the issue of diversity and inclusion to have credibility, sometimes you need to embrace male colleagues. And I think that that's one of the things that, you know, we even did, you know, the group tried to do this year, right? Of trying to get men in the conversation. I think even on campus, that's what we're trying to do, get other people in on the conversation so that everybody's speaking the same language, right? And I think the more we can do that, I think that will help address that. I think there's some questions back here too, right? Yes, right here. Oopsie. Oh, that's okay. Go ahead, you have the mic, so.
Hi everyone, my name is Gabriella, American University undergrad alum and a future, hopefully, MBAer somewhere. So I guess I have a two-part question, and we've kind of been touching upon certain things, but I'm curious. How have the both of you been able to stay true to yourself without necessarily being pigeonholed into the role of the woman in the organization or in the team, or the Latina or the African American? So how have you both dealt with that? And then we also kind of touched upon men, but how have you avoided, or how have the both of you necessarily dealt with sometimes working with our men counterparts and getting them to respect us without necessarily being seen as pushy or aggressive? Because, you know, by the time we actually get our seat at the table and get our respect, they might have a certain view of us, and then it makes it that much more difficult to work together. So those were just my two questions.
Good questions for y'all. Well, you've had a lot of practice with both those questions. Yeah.
Well, I was fortunate early on in my career. Discovery actually was a very diverse. We actually was 60% women. Our president and CEO was a woman. And so I actually didn't face it early in my career. It was great. And then as we started getting bigger and going public and bringing all the Wall Street people in, it started to change a little bit. And that was actually quite hard for me because I did have a situation where we had a new CFO come in, and my first meeting, I apparently with him insulted him because he said something and I told him he was wrong. And so for the next 4 years that he was at the company, I pretty much had to go underground a little bit. I avoided the floor. You know, he did not like me. It was very obvious, and you know, I just had to wait it out, and it was pretty uncomfortable, and I didn't enjoy it. But you know, he left eventually, and so I asked him. But yeah, I mean, it is tough. I think sometimes you have to. You have to be, that's, I think, where, you know, the confidence starts waning, and you just have to kind of be true to yourself and know that you know what you're talking about, and again, find the people who believe in you to keep pumping you up, and, you know, just be confident that you're doing a good job. It's not easy. There's not like a magic solution to solve it, but if you just, I think people will respect you, your colleagues will respect you if you kind of don't cave and you just keep plugging along and doing what you need to do and speaking up. And, if he had stayed, I probably would have eventually had to leave, but fortunately for me, that didn't happen. But I think in different stages of your career and in different stages of a company, you're going to run into different situations, and you just have to take a deep breath and kind of know that you're good enough to be there, and believe in yourself.
For me, it's be true to yourself. Is a good one. So, in the industry where I started my career, it was mostly men, and and I even tell my kids this now. You should dress and sort of look a little bit conformish, but still with your own style, because. And it does sound kind of like you're not being true to yourself, but if you do it within some sort of boundaries of what is still you. But I just don't believe in making yourself an outlier just because I want you to hear what I'm saying and not be distracted by however I may be dressed different because I'm different than somebody else. And of course, I'm already showing up different because I'm a woman and the rest of you are men. Or I'm African American and the rest of you are white men. So I already have that. So I always would be true to myself in within some standard deviation, right? and so that was more early in my career, and I still sort of do that. I feel like there's that sort of work person, and you still find that person within the person I am at home, but it's like a subset. So that's what I mean by that standard deviation. But I think in the core, I'm the same person walking around. I'm not going to waver. I still keep the same grace about me. I still have the same integrity, and I'm not going to I still stay honest and things like that. Like I'm not going to deviate from my morals, so to speak, but it's more of a visual thing that I may change. And then related to, what was the other half of your question was about dealing with men. I early on in my career, I don't really do this now, but early on for me, it was, something I would call like Jedi mind trick. So I might have the answer. I would almost always have the answer. And especially if I'm dealing with someone above me, I would sort of rephrase it and say, well, do you think this would work? And then they look at it, and then, they know the answer was yes, it would work. Or, sometimes it makes they can more accept it if it seems like they bought in or that it was partially their idea. But over time, when you're working with that same person, they realize that you have the knowledge, and then you're going to be the one that will shine through, and they'll be maybe that person who's sponsoring you in the future.
Yeah, it sounds like a very woman thing to say, but I've always tried to make my bosses look good, so I kind of do some things behind the scenes to make them look good, and then they become loyal to you because they know you were helping them out. So I think that helps. But it's always so funny when you were talking about being true to yourself, because there's 2 or 3 men in particular I can think of that their work personalities are the biggest jerks. Like, they're just jerks at work. Like, people don't like working for them. They manage up all the time. They don't manage down well. They're just very demanding. But you see them outside of work with their families, and they're like these big softies who like have kids and a wife run them around. And it's just so funny because I don't think a woman could do that. Like, I just don't think you could be one personality at work and one personality at home. That's like kind of you are who you are. But I always laugh and I just think it's so funny. But it is great when you see them outside of work because then you know that's probably who they really are, and they're just kind of playing the whole thing you play at work. So then you can kind of work them a little bit that way. So.
But that goes back to when you discover those kinds of personal things, that actually helps you in working with them.
That's what I mean.
Right.
I use that to my advantage now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I just figure they don't get to run anything at home, so that's why.
Okay, so let's take one last question, and you are ready to guess.
Maybe I just
I know we around
speak
a little bit,
now.
so we can
Yeah,
answer
yeah.
it. Yes.
So, hello everyone. My name is. Hello everyone. My name is Chisha Susan Chen. I am a second-year Master Finance candidate and will graduate in this May. So I am going to be a kind of entry-level analysis or trainee in finance industry, like really in the coming future. So I have a very controversial questions like I may face in the future working field. So I think sometimes it's really hard for women entry level person to seek for mentors for their senior level managers. Actually, most of them are men. So, do you have any tips or suggestions for entry level women how to seek for mentors from their senior managers? Most of them are men. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, I think a man could be a mentor for you. I've had plenty. So I think, you just need to find somebody and look for somebody who you respect and you like their style. And, most people, male or female, if you ask for help and if you ask for advice, people want to give advice. I mean, you're flattering them. And, you go to them and say, hey, I've been watching you. I think, I like the way you do X, Y, and Z, can you help me out? I think if you can't find a woman, I think finding a male with the personality and the traits that you like will do just fine.
But sometimes, if you go to that senior manager, maybe a little bit more often than others. So sometimes, your colleagues, they may have some little bit gossip about you. So whether you are seeking for that male senior manager for other things as well, maybe you should seek for the actual benefits for him. So that's why I kind of raise up these questions. Because I currently, not me, it's maybe some other, my previous colleagues in my internship, she kind of faced the same similar situation.
So that brings up a good point. And one of the things that I talk a lot to women at my company is remember that everybody is really focused on up, but your colleagues are the ones that are going to make or break you. Because if you're looking for a promotion, if your colleagues don't like you, you're not going to get it because they're going to be asked just as much as the senior people working with you, whether you're liked or not. And so in that situation, I would make sure your colleagues knew what you were doing. Like, hey, I'm going to go talk to this guy and I'm going to ask him to be my mentor, and they would know. There wouldn't be any gossip because they should know exactly what your, goal is and your strategy in that situation. So make sure that you have those relationships and that, you're not competing with your colleagues, but you guys are helping each other out because the more you help each other out, the more people see you helping somebody else, the more likely they are to help you. And, I had somebody early in my career that we were kind of peers, and she would get frustrated because she'd say, well, Kristen's the favorite, so I'll never get the promotion because she's the favorite. I'm like, I'm not doing anything. I'm not going out and she always felt like I was undercutting her, and I wasn't. But I think you're going to find those situations too, but you just have to be honest with yourself and with the people around you and just be authentic. And don't play those games. Just be honest and open about what you're trying to do. And if people want to say things, they'll say things, and you just can't get caught up in them.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point as the performance for reviews, a lot of them are these 360 reviews where they're trying to get feedback from your peers and your bosses and your direct reports. You want to make sure that you have good relationships with people at all different levels. Okay, I think we're going to stop here with the questions. I'm going to turn it back over to Sharon, I believe.
So the question is, what do you get a Smith woman who has the coveted crystal turtle? What do you get the alum that has come back and got the highest award? What should we give her? Of course, another turtle. This time it's not crystal, but it's something that you can hang on your wall.